DJ Derek Burke. How are you doing?
Good to meet you. Great to be on the podcast.
Amazing. So, the curious thing is, every time I meet someone that goes by the name of Ellis Nair, I meet other people that I in some way collaborate with. Ellis Nair invites me to listen to him because he'll be on a radio show. So I go and listen, and there I see a very charismatic person by the name of DJ Derek Burke, who has a similar kind of, drive to get local talent on and get them a platform, a voice. Amazing.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about maybe how you got into the radio business and how you got into, doing what you do in your radio station?
Okay, well, it goes way back to the 90s.
Okay.
That's where it actually really started, because I was big into radio, So I entered the competition to be a DJ for a day, which was brilliant. So, RT2FM, as it's known now. So I entered the competition on a children's program, and I became a DJ for a day, which was brilliant, on the breakfast show at the time. And the radio presenter at the time was the very well-known Ian Dempsey, who now presents the breakfast show on Today FM, one of the biggest stations in Ireland. So I presented a radio show with him for 2 hours one morning, and it was brilliant. And the producer was John Clark, who does a lot of online radio shows like me nowadays. But that was way back in 1994.
Oh, wow.
And it was funny, after that, I used to set up a pretend radio studio in my house. So I'd have I think I had a real mic, but I set up a board. I put a board game there, pretending they're the sort of faders up and down, I always wanted to be a DJ, but the opportunity never knocked.
Wow.
So fast forward to 2020, and Christmas FM are running a radio training course, which I'd wanted to do for a good few years, but it was too expensive. It didn't fit in my budget. So during lockdown, because they had to do the course online, through Audacity, I think it was about €150. So I just went for it, and I said, I was furloughed at the time from work, so I needed sort of a project to work on. So, yeah.
Wow, so there's a lot to unfold there. So
yeah,
your career goes all the way back to the 90s, and it's really, really awesome that people usually, you can tell that someone belongs where they do these kind of things from the way and what they spend their childhood doing. And you spent your childhood, doing pretense DJ, and then later on, found yourself in that same business, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And this is another hand work.
Thanks very much.
I really appreciate someone being able to get into the kind of workspace that they dreamt of being into,
Yeah.
How did you get into the radio station that you currently work at?
So currently I'm presenting a radio show on Liffey Sound, which is located in Lucan in West Dublin here in Ireland. And so after I did the Christmas FM course, I then started looking for online radio stations to present shows on, because Christmas FM is very hard to become a DJ. It's very easy to do the course and get your certificate, but to become a presenter, you have to be really well known, the top DJ in the country, I'm not there yet, maybe someday,
Well, it's definitely already quite an interesting thing that you are doing, that you are putting on kind of local talent and different talents, such as Alice Nair. So how did that come about? Did you think of it yourself, or how did that come about?
Well, it was funny, when I was doing the radio training course, and putting shows together, I used to imagine myself having guests in the studio, and thinking, wouldn't it be great to have a show where I have guests on the phone or guests in the studio or so on, And after my training with Christmas FM, I did a pop show for 2 hours on a station based in Cork called It's All Mixed Up, which is a great name, And that's where the classic hit show started. which I still present to this day, albeit on Liffey Sound now.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
So, how has like kind of the radio business in you having had experiences for 30 years now? How has it changed in your opinion?
Well, I suppose the biggest change is that there's online radio stations now and voice tracking systems, which gave me the opportunity to present radio shows in the UK.
Okay.
So during lockdown, from the years from about 2020 to 2022, I worked in various different online radio stations in the UK, and I could record from home.
Okay.
It's great. Just log on to the voice tracking system, which is great, and the technology is brilliant because during lockdown it allowed presenters to be at home and still present shows, entertain people who were maybe, down in the dumps or stuck at home working, studying, whatever,
And in your radio show, of course, we know that you have these people on. How would you what type of tips would you give like an aspiring artist to get on your show, or what would they have to do to get noticed by you?
Well, it's funny, I started having musicians on the show 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I started having musicians that were very up and coming. But as more musicians came on, other musicians started noticing the show and they just contact me,
Okay.
And sometimes I would reach out to musicians
Good stuff.
that I'd say, would you like to come on the show?
Nice. Right.
And it's interesting, I kind of know straight away if a musician wants to come on or not.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I can feel the vibe,
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a talent in itself. It's a talent in itself. And you said you reach out to certain people that you like. Could you maybe talk about the type of genres, like just genres in general, how it pertains to your preference, and the artists that you liked that came on that made you look into that genres, although they are not necessarily your favorite genre?
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. You see, it. Firstly, if I feel good vibes from the artist, sometimes I would bring them on the show even if I'm not into their music.
Sure.
Then if they come into the studio, that genre kind of starts growing on me, like the hip hop genre and so on, And I, at the start I had singer-songwriters. And then I was becoming friends with musicians because I do some music PR as well with musicians. So I was meeting different musicians and I was getting really friendly with them. And I was saying, listen, come on to my show and, perform your type of music,
Yeah.
And through that, I've got to enjoy a lot more music genres and appreciate more music genres.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean I fully like 100% a particular music genre.
Right.
But I like it more than I did.
No, that's an interesting way of approaching it, because I think most people go by either it's the level of popularity or it's their preference of music, I'd say.
Yeah.
While you go about it, the vibes. Vibes is number one, and that's actually a good way to look at it, because you know that when they come on your show, you will have a good time.
Exactly, yeah.
And then the people can tell that you have a good time with that person.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes a long way, usually much longer of a way than if you have someone on just for the views and you don't really like the vibes that are going on. People might tune in because that's a certain personality, but then they will be quickly turned off by the lack of atmosphere and vibes between them.
Yeah.
So that's actually
so that's why I always know straight away when I'm talking to people if they're interested in coming on the show or not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'll always just bring on people that I know there'll be a good vibe with. you know.
No, that's actually a very wise way of looking at it. So you skirted around the first question, but we'll have to ask you
Okay,
again.
ask me again.
So what are the genres that you prefer listening to?
Well, initially it was pop music. Like my genres are 80s, 90s, and 80s. That's
Nice.
yeah.
Any favorites?
Well, like I'd like Bon Jovi, U2,
okay.
you know. And some of the 90s bands I like People Were Good. They had good music in the 90s, you know. The boy bands were good. I actually liked them a lot in the 90s, you know.
What is it? Backstreet's Back?
Backstreet Boys, Boyzone, Take That All, that kind of stuff, you know.
All right.
But, of course, a lot of that wasn't the original music, you know.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah,
but I like the sound and the vibes to the music.
Sure.
I think I fancy myself as a boy band member.
Fair enough. But I mean, I think these days, I can't. I mean, are there any boy bands even in Ireland these days?
Ooh, you're putting me on the spot now. I don't know the full answer to that. I'd have to be corrected on that by somebody listening, you know.
I'm not I know that there was, what was the...
Yeah, I mean, Westlife obviously relaunched their career and they did a big tour around the world.
Okay.
And they did a couple of nights in Croke Park, and they're all from Dublin.
Oh, wow.
So they rejoined together about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And they were one of the big
boy
but it
was One Direction, and one of them was Irish, wasn't it?
One of them was Irish, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the rest were British, no? Something like that.
Westlife?
No, One Direction.
Yeah, I think some of them were British, yeah. There was one Irish person in it, I think, you know.
But yeah, wait, wasn't there Jedward?
Oh, Jedward, yeah. I mean, Jedward are kind of still going, but I don't know if they perform much.
The reason I know them is because my currently missing co-host, he said he knows the Jedward family.
That's really interesting because I worked in a retail shop for many years, and one of the people who worked with me, who was actually in the music business now, over in, I can't think of the country he's in. It's not Prague now. That's another music friend of mine. But he went to school with Jedward, and he knows them well.
Yeah, they're supposedly from Lucan.
Yeah.
And
So it's interesting. It's a small world too. That's the thing about the music industry, and
it's true.
In Ireland, you know,
and usually Alice Nair is the person that links everyone together with me. Like half of the quarter of the people that we had on was due to Alice Nair.
Alice Nair, yeah, and he's
he
super.
Was actually sitting in that seat that
he's
sitting in.
Yeah, I remember he spoke about your podcast on my show.
Nice.
Yeah, because I was asking him, you know, if he had been on other radio shows, and he was talking about this podcast, and I was very interested in it.
Thank you, Alice.
Yeah, because I often feel a podcast is, you can do more with it. You know, in the radio, you have to follow particular rules and regulations, you know, and so on and so forth, and.
So another thing is, so I was actually going to, he kind of partially answered the question that I had. So with your radio show, and you know, you also said that the greatness is that now online radio shows, and through the pandemic you were able to kind of reach audiences that were beyond just Ireland, etc. You know, how do you think that people that have a traditional radio show, how do you think they can compete with online radio for one, and also podcast? How can they still compete with them?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I was actually talking about this at home last night because I was telling my parents and my wife that I was going to be on the podcast, and it brought up the discussion about podcast versus radio shows.
More potential followers.
Yeah. And it's interesting because my mother actually said that somebody was talking to her recently, and the discussions nowadays are, what podcast did you listen to?
Oh, okay.
You know, more than what radio show do you listen to, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, radio has to battle with podcasts, But mind you, all of them are uploaded to podcast channels as
is
well,
that right?
if you like.
Huh.
So my radio show will be uploaded to all the podcast streaming services.
Oh, I did. Okay,
You
I
know,
didn't know that.
now not all radio stations in Ireland will upload their show. So a lot of live commercial shows happen, they're live, and that's it, they're gone.
Okay.
You know, so in that respect, they don't have as good an advantage over the podcast because people can listen back to the podcast. You know, if I had a show on commercial radio, I wouldn't be able to necessarily upload it.
All right.
So if people weren't around on a Friday night, you know, you listen or you miss out.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting, and I'm sure it's going to get more and more difficult for the, for the radio host, the commercial radio that are not. So yeah, you said that is one of the ways that the radio stations can compete with the podcast, which is to kind of feed into the popularity of the podcast by uploading their shows, the clips and the full episodes to the podcast streaming channel. So that's interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Amazing,
yeah.
And for upcoming potential radio presenters, what tips would you give them to, go into the business?
In my experience, like looking back on how I got into the radio, like, doing the course for Christmas FM, going through the online radio shows and all, I would actually suggest to people to contact their local community radio station, because a lot of community radio stations, some of them will provide sort of free training, like you can apply to do radio shows. If you're successful, they'll, put you through a training course and then you get your show, Now, of course, Christmas FM always continuously have training courses. So for sure, people can do training. Like that was great training for me.
Right. So Christmas FM has all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
Sorry, I make terrible dad jokes every single episode. Christmas as FM has all the bells and whistles.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, by the way, I'm not. I don't work in marketing for Christmas FM.
Okay, no.
Yeah,
it's good. No, it's a
but
good
no,
thing.
there was good bits to it, and after the course, we got to record a 2-hour show, and we got to hold that demo.
Amazing.
Which is great.
Yeah, that's definitely
brilliant. So there's two ways of doing it in this country. I suppose people could contact their local community station, or they can go to Christmas FM. Like here in Dublin, you have Phoenix FM and Blanchardstown.
Oh yeah. 92.5.
Yeah, 92.5. You have Near FM up in near Coolock, I think.
Okay.
You have Liffey Sound in Lucan. You have Together FM, which is somewhere out in West Dublin as well.
Okay.
You have Dublin South FM, you have a load of different stations like that, And you have Liffey Sound, of course, Many of my friends have come in after me.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I was going to tell you how I think you asked me this earlier and maybe we didn't get around to it, but how I actually started playing independent music on my radio show. After Christmas FM, I did the online radio shows, and then I did the Classic Hit show.
Okay.
Originally on the Cork station I mentioned earlier. It's all mixed up. And then there was a Dublin station set up called Tomorrow Radio.
All right.
And I did the Classic Hit show there for a while. And then the owner of the station said he just wants to play independent artists, like music from independent artists. So I had a show called Derek Burke's Simply the Decade Show.
Okay.
I don't know why I named it that. But there was a guy who writes his own music. He's a singer-songwriter. He does musicals around Dublin.
Okay.
I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he contacted me when I started the show, and he said, "This is my new song. Would you like to play it on the radio show?" And after that, then on that show, 2 hours a week, I played just independent music, and the show somehow got out there. I had musicians contacting me from Africa, Australia, brilliant, know. And there was a music PR company in Dublin called Music Box PR.
Okay.
And they, together with them, we decided to come up with the Music Box PR Top 10 Countdown.
Okay.
So at the end of the show, every week they submit 10 songs of, Irish independent artists, sort of upcoming artists, 10 of their favourite songs in order, So the first hour and a half of the show was strictly independent musicians, their new releases, and at the last, 40 minutes, half an hour, was a top 10 countdown.
Wow.
And I applied then to Liffey Sound FM with to do the classic hit show, playing one new, one artist every week. And after about a year in the show, I approached the manager and I said, could I start bringing a band or musician in the studio?
Okay.
And following that, then the show got extended by 2 hours. So I could have just decided to just do a pop show.
Yeah.
But I love it now because it's interactive. I have band musicians in all the time. It's brilliant.
So I have a friend. Her name is Ashiktik. Ashiktik, and it's Kazakh. She's coming to Ireland, and she wants to, get her music out there. She does like pop music, indie as well. So, she's a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
She has, found some, has made a splash in Kazakhstan, in Kazakh, but of course she wants to, do it in English. So she's going to redo some of her Kazakh songs in English.
Brilliant.
But then also has some songs out there. And you, as someone who has loved songs, pop songs from the 80s, 90s, and noughties, she has this song out there. I'm known around my friends to be like Simon Cowell when it comes to when they want me to criticize the songs.
Yeah.
I give them very long paragraphs, and because I grew up in Germany, I'm very German.
Oh, right, okay.
So I'll tell them the business. But that's the song that she has. It's called Addicted.
Addicted, wow.
Out of this world, Derek. Wow. It's out of this world. And I would love to send it to you, but I can't. I think she would want me only to send it along to people once it's kind of almost out.
I know what you mean.
She's very methodic.
Yeah.
She has
I understand she'd want to just wait for the final product and get it out.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And then she has another one, which is extremely funky. She has an interesting range. It's extremely it's pop, but it's extremely funky,
Yeah, so the funky pop, yeah.
Yeah. But the other ones are like singer-songwriter, and that Addicted song really takes you back to the noughties, like to the pop rock and pop, but I can't explain it. It is so good.
Yeah,
I wish
I can't wait to hear.
I will ask her if I can send it to you.
No, that'd be great. There's so many. The talent in this world nowadays is just super.
Yeah.
Like
especially with everyone having like access to like tools, because beforehand it was really expensive. You had to get a machinery. Now you can get on your laptop and
Oh yeah, there's actually a musician I know, John Winters. I played some of his music on radio before. And a couple of years ago, he built like a sort of a half studio in his bedroom, I think.
Okay.
And it was just super. And the music he made, like it was played on commercial stations in Ireland, like it was that good.
Okay.
And there was another band, Mute the TV, two brothers.
Okay.
And they set up their own studio. And again, the recording quality was super. Like that was played on Ireland's national station, like Radio 1.
Okay.
So, people are so talented and they're building these studios and they're doing all the work themselves, like they sleep and work at night and their music and all, but the dedication is super.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to her being here. She's very she plans everything out. So
brilliant.
So that's that's the kind of mindset to have, and not and also grind.
Yeah.
Being able to look forward and hope for the best, and also prepare for, people saying no, and stuff.
Yeah.
So
that's one of the hardest things working in radio and music is no. I remember doing an online radio show a couple of years ago, and I did it every Sunday. And one Monday I got a message, myself and another guy, and said the station's closing down.
Oh wow.
Gone, so.
Oh wow.
Yeah. No, I mean it's radio is my hobby.
Yeah.
It's all volunteer work, like it's all fun hobby work. So, I still have my full-time job.
Sure.
Yeah. But still, it's hard. Like if you're doing this radio show and whatever, and all of a sudden, boom, gone.
Of course,
Yeah.
It's something that you have interest in, and you
Yeah.
dedicate.
So you have to be really resilient and have a tough skin to kind of get up the next morning and say, look, move on, contact the next station, or
Yeah, what's next for the show?
At the moment, I'm just want the show to get out there more.
Of course,
because I feel all these artists, they make big effort to come to my studio.
Right.
Like I've had musicians drive from Limerick.
Oh wow!
I had a musician drive up from Cork with her girlfriend. They stayed in a hotel for the night just to be on the show.
Okay, that's dedication.
And
amazing.
I'd love more people to listen to the show, because there's only about 3 shows in the country like mine, and I can give a shout out to one of the shows. It's my friend Keith McLaughlin.
Okay.
And he does a similar show on Dublin South FM on Sunday nights, and he brings in musicians as well.
All right.
So there's really only kind of 2 of us who bring in the real up and coming artists. I think maybe Near FM does it too, maybe Phoenix, I'm not sure, but I'd love the show to get out there more, so the musicians have loads of people listening to them.
Okay.
Well,
whatever we can do with our promotion of your radio show, we definitely.
Yeah.
And wow, yeah, I think this was a very educational episode, because I think a lot of people kind of forget, like, the long and rich history that radio shows had, even like because for me, for example, internet basically eradicated anything else that came before it. Like I get my news from the I can't even remember the last time I got my news from a TV.
Yeah.
Like or radio even.
Yeah.
I get it from the internet, and I think it's similar to for other people that listen to podcasts and they can't remember the last time they listened to a radio show, but of course they probably are not even aware that the podcast that they listen to is actually a radio show.
Exactly right. That's the point I made to Ellis Lawyer, because he talked about being on a podcast.
Right.
And I said, well, my show turned into a podcast. It's maybe not a traditional podcast because it's talking and music and so on. So Spotify don't allow it.
Okay, they don't.
Because Spotify can only be talk podcasts.
All right.
Because the music element is meant to be held for musicians.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But you were talking there about the importance of radio.
Right.
There was one thing I was going to say during lockdown.
Right.
A friend of mine came to me, and he, a lot of people working from home during lockdown. They couldn't see family, they couldn't see friends. And this particular friend of mine was studying for exams, probably around 2021. And he said, your show really helped me through study. Because, and it's funny, when I was going through a tough time in lockdown, I listened to my show and I was going, that guy sounds really happy. Sounds really cheerful. And then I realised that's me.
I guess that means we should probably tell all the people outside.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember even recording a show one time under a lot of stress because I was in between jobs and I was deciding to leave a job and whatever.
Right.
And I remember sitting down at 10 o'clock one night under huge stress recording a show from home, and I listened back and saying, he looks so happy. Sounds so happy, cheerful.
Yeah, I think, and also, like I said, I think a lot of it has to do with the way you approach, doing your show and having the guest on. You're going off vibes, you're going off atmosphere, and that people that listen to it or watch it, they kind of get that.
Get the vibe,
It goes over to them, and I think that is one of the best kind of advice to give to the people that are coming up, is to kind of not only go by the numbers, etc., go by the people that you can see have a hunger for it, but also that you can see that you'll have a nice vibe, a nice atmosphere with it.
That's why I'd love to get the show out there more, because I'm so fortunate. All the musicians that come in, the minute we turn on the mic, the vibes just start.
Amazing.
I had a musician one time called A1 Alvin.
Okay.
I don't know if you've come across him.
No.
A real good friend of mine, and the first time he came to the show, he arrived early,
Okay.
and I just opened the door, and he was, hello. He's really shy.
Okay.
And the minute the mic went on, since then we've been best mates.
Oh wow, amazing.
Amazing. It's funny when you turn on the mic.
Right.
It's like a different world. Like I've done musical theatre, I've done pantos, I've done drama. It's funny when you walk on stage or you go in front of a mic, whatever it does to the mind, it's like, you're in this different world,
Okay.
where you can just be yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
You, as they say, you are giving them gems. You're giving out gems, and I think a lot of people can learn from the very valuable things that you said.
Yeah.
Like I'm even rethinking some of for example, for the procurement of our next kind of guests. You definitely gave us some things to think about.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I definitely appreciate you coming on the episode.
And thanks for having me on. It's great.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
This was Slim and Light. All right.
Thanks very much. That was great.
Thank you very much.
Really enjoyed that. Yeah, it's brilliant.